Hey guys, Dylan here, and welcome to my second channel, Dylan Goo 2. If you're new here, go ahead and check out my main channel, Dylan Goo, where I make cool fight scenes and stuff. Anyway, moving on. This video exists because people have been asking for a more general overview of rigging in Blender. And there's already a lot of tutorials out there that focus on humanoid rigging and character rigging and stuff like that, but it's a little too specific. Not very many people actually go into the fundamentals, getting down to the basics for universal application for other objects and animals and etc. So that's what this video is about. It's understanding the basics of rigging for universal application. In this tutorial, you'll be learning how to rig a robot arm, as well as a tentacle. So let's get started. Now, I'm making this video with the assumption that you're already pretty comfortable navigating and transforming in Blender. If you're not, go ahead and check out my other tutorial, How to Use Blender for the Absolute Beginner. It's a great way to get started with Blender, and it teaches you how to do some basic modeling and transformations and stuff like that. So, what is rigging? Well, for those of you who are new, you might have heard the word skeleton or armature before. Now, the words skeleton, armature, and rig are all synonymous. A rig slash skeleton slash armature is a construct consisting of bones that are designed to deform an object. This could mean being a finger, a leg, or simply rotating a wheel. The anything part of this title refers to the idea that any object, animal, or machine that you need rigged can be rigged with these methods. This also includes humanoids, but there's a faster way to do that, which I outline in this tutorial, also on this channel. It's also good to know if you're going to move a whole object, like a cube or a table, you don't necessarily need to rig anything. Just animate the object as a whole. But if you need a table to walk on its legs like a cartoon character, then you would want it to be rigged. Now, Blender's rigging is extremely easy and intuitive, so just follow closely, and if you get lost, just pause and play it back again. So, let's start with the most basic, a robot arm. Now, it's important to note that the model you rig should ideally be modeled in the rest position. This allows for easier rigging. In this case, all of my robot hand's fingers are straightened, and the elbow is at 90 degrees. This is simply because this elbow isn't made to completely extend straight, but if it was, then I would definitely recommend it. While there is no strictly correct way of doing this, a general rule of thumb could be keep things as straight as possible unless it's 90 degrees. So first thing you're going to need is an armature. So let's go ahead and add that, Shift A, and then armature, and then go to single bone. So we have a single bone added here. It's not in the center. Go ahead and hit Alt G to put that in the center. Alt G brings any object to its original rest position. And I'm going to go and go into wireframe mode. Now, as you can see, this armature is inside of this robot arm, which is where we want it to be. Now, obviously this bone is very small. We'll edit it in a bit. Now, since an armature is an object, you'll notice you can tab in and out of edit mode. Now, this will be very important for creating the armature, but another mode that you'll notice is called pose mode, which is Control Tab. And only in this mode can you animate the bones, but we'll get to that later. Now, before we completely begin editing these bones, what you'll need to do is identify some joints. Joints are where you want the object to bend. So here we have the obvious joints, the elbow, the wrist, and of course the finger joints here. So now that we know exactly where those joints are, what we're going to want to do is add a bone in between these joints. Each bone should begin at one joint and end at the next joint. Keep in mind, the bigger base is the pivot point. It's the root. So you want to go out from the root. This will make more sense later on. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and tab into edit mode and select just this top part of the bone, the tail end of the bone, and drag it along the z-axis all the way up to the first joint right here, which is the elbow. Just a quick tip, if you guys want to snap to a vertex in your geometry, for example, the middle of that circle there is exactly where I want it to be. I have snap to vertex enabled here, which is under snap element, and it's usually on increment, but you can change it to vertex pretty easily. And then you just hold control and you can snap it along a vertex, and boom, that's exactly where I want it to be. Now, after you've done the first joint, the next joint is you need to create another bone. Now, the easiest way to do this, there is technically, you can hit Shift A and it will create another bone at the cursor, but that's not where we want it to be at all, and kind of inconvenient, and then have to move it back over here and all that stuff. I don't want to do that. So I'll go ahead and undo that. And then I will take this bone. I'm going to select the tail end of this bone that we already had selected before. And then I'm going to hit E for extrude. Yes, you can extrude bones. For those of you guys familiar with modeling, you can extrude bones, and that will act in a very similar way. Oops, sorry, wrong axis. And I'm going to extrude that along the Y-axis until the next joint, which is probably around here. And I'm going to snap it over to this wrist area. So this forearm bone is actually parented to this this root bone here. And so if you move this, you'll notice the forearm moves with it, which is exactly what we want in this case. Obviously, when you move this, this doesn't move at all. Now, keep in mind the pivot points are important. So if I wanted to start a hand, you know, here, but I wanted this part to bend, this pivot point, as you can see here, is not congruent to where the actual pivot point for the hand is. So you want that to be congruent. So I'm going to go ahead and just move this up to where that is. And these bones are connected. They don't have to be, but there's no actual harm done. And I'm going to have this hand bone extend all the way over to, you know, the edge of this robot hand. Now, you'll notice that from here, you don't really know where to go exactly. Like if I started the finger here, you know, you could technically start 3 different fingers. Yeah, sure. But then notice where the pivot point is. You know, these pivot points don't all share the center. You know what I mean? Like this finger is not going to bend at the center. This finger clearly bends here, and this finger clearly bends here. And you should have these joints laid out beforehand. And since that's not always the best case scenario, keeping these bones connected, I'm gonna go ahead and delete these bones real quick. I'll show you how to create a bone that isn't connected but still parented. So what you can do is, there's a couple of different ways. I personally like to extrude it and then select it and then hit Alt P and say disconnect bone. And once you do that, you can move it around freely and it won't alter the position of the hand bone. And what you can do now is you can adjust the actual pivot. And I want to move that pivot to be around here. I think that's fine. This can be kind of like a spongy substance for a joint. And then I'm going to bring this part back down to this part, to this joint here, which is, and then from there, this is the very easy part. Let's go ahead and hit E, Z, which is very easy, and then go to the next joint there, and then hit EZ again, and then we can bring it over here to the end of the finger. Then same thing here. I'm going to go ahead and extrude in this correct direction that I want it to be in, and then I'm going to hit Alt P, disconnect bone, and then bring the pivot point out a little bit further to where I want it to be. So I want this to be actually right here, where I can actually move this suction cup thing with the correct pivot and not something that's way off the center. So I'm gonna go ahead and repeat that for the other 2 fingers. One cool thing you can do is you can actually duplicate bones. So since I have this here, I can go ahead and hit Shift D and I can bring it to this side. And then I can go ahead and hit Control M, X, which mirrors on the X axis, and then adjust it a little bit further. And now I have the other finger. Very easy way to make your armature forming much more efficient. And there we go. That should be fine. And then now I have every bone laid out perfectly. So that's already pretty good. It looks like, I'm gonna go ahead and double check these parentings. Yeah, the parents are working fine. I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the pose mode. This, the hand moves all 3 fingers as a parent, and this forearm moves the hand as a parent. And of course this this upper arm, or the root bone, is moving everything as a parent. So that's a good chain. That's a good chain that works for our purposes. You don't always want to have everything in one chain, but in this case we do. So this part was very easy. You just got to set it up and kind of trace the shape of your model however you want, and then make sure the joints are properly mapped. And then, so what's the next step? The next step is very easy. What you want to do is go ahead and go to object mode, and you want to select your mesh, your model here, and then select your armature and hit Control P. Now here you have a few options. It doesn't immediately parent. It gives you a drop-down menu, And if you parent it as an object, it doesn't do anything. That just treats the armature like another object. It doesn't actually do any deforming or anything like that. Object keep transform, same thing. Armature deform is the one you want. Now, under armature deform, you'll notice there's 3 others. And also bone and bone relative are more specific, a specific bone as opposed to the armature itself. You don't want those right now. So armature deform is what you want, but which one of these 3 do you actually want to click? Armature deform is the very, very most basic application of armature deform. Now, the one you want to click depends on how you want to go about doing this. If you do with automatic weights, most likely it's going to do something very organic. It's going to have a more organic mapping because that's the easiest way to do it algorithmically. Just kind of go like, oh, how close is it to the bone? Go ahead and give this a certain weight. Envelope weights does basically a very similar thing. Now, empty groups is the one that we're going to use for this robot arm. And the reason is because this robot arm is not organic. It is mechanical. And mechanical objects, mechanical rigs usually operate on a non-organic weight mapping. And I'll show you what that is in a second. It sounds scarier than it is. So I'm going to go ahead and hit armature deform with empty groups. So let's go ahead and select our mesh again. And you'll notice under this triangle section, under vertex groups, you'll see all these names. All, of course, bone 1, bone 2, bone 3, bone 4, blah, 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 blah. So the way rigging works in Blender is vertex groups are given a certain weight to a certain bone based on the name of the group. So the name of the group associates directly to which bone it is being deformed by. So if you notice, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Tab to go into weight paint mode on our mesh, and everything's blue right now. For each one of these vertex groups, they should all be empty because I said specifically with empty groups, and everything's blue. Everything should be blue. But what we'll be doing is we'll be selecting, say, this area with the L key for linked vertices. And I'm going to go ahead and choose, I know because I can just count 1, 2, bone 2, sorry, bone 1, because this is bone and this is bone 1, is going to be the forearm. So I want to say bone 1, assign with a weight of 1, which is 100%. And now suddenly the entire part is red. And let's go ahead and get out of weight paint mode, select the armature, go into pose mode, and then move that around. And you'll notice that this elbow, or this forearm piece, is now moving with the forearm bone with a weight of 1, which is how mechanical things actually do it, with a weight of 1. An organic weight mapping is more of a gradient, more of a fall off. But you don't want to fall off for a robot because robots are hard pieces with, specific joints and everything like that. The tentacle is going to be where the organic stuff is coming along. So as you can see here, I have that working. So what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to choose which pieces do I want to be influenced by 100% for certain bones. But before I do that, this can get kind of confusing. So I'm just going to go ahead and name these bones real quick. So I'm going to say this is upper arm. This is forearm. This is hand. This will be, it's a little more difficult. This is finger mid 01. Finger mid 02. Finger mid 03. And this can be finger mid tip. Oops, tip. Okay, and then this will be finger 01.L. And this .L is very important. I did that for a reason. And then I'm going to do finger 2.L and finger 3.L, yada yada, etc., etc. And then I'm going to go ahead and do finger R, or finger 1, sorry, finger 1.R. So now that we have all our bones named very healthily, you can even go back to this mesh and you'll notice all the vertex groups have changed, which is good. This is good. So these names still correlate with the bone names, but now it's a little bit more obvious which one we're assigning it to. So since we already assigned this section to the forearm bone, let's go ahead and finish assigning things to the forearm bone. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this guy, and I'll go ahead and bring this guy too. This can go for either one because it's literally on a joint. For mechanical pieces that are round and spherical, rotations are not as obvious, but if you want it to rotate while the forearm rotates, go ahead and add it. I like to add it just because it seems like more is happening. And then I think that's about it. It's honestly, I think only these 3 pieces. It looks like there's a stray piece there. And I'll go ahead and assign all of this with a weight of 1 to the forearm. So now this entire back area is working as well. So you'll notice, of course, this part isn't following it, but that's because we want that to be parented to the hand. So let's go ahead and select the hand vertex group now. Go ahead and hit L, and let's go ahead and assign this hand section right here with a weight of 1. And oh, looks like I want to assign this section as well with a weight of 1. And it looks like that's about it. And then let's go and test that out. Yes. Those are the pieces that I want to be affected by the hand bone. And so the rest of it is pretty self-explanatory. This part's going to be part of the finger, and so are all these hinge pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this part as well. And I'm going to have that as finger L. This is finger 1.L. Assign. And we'll go ahead and do this as well. This. And yeah, the rest is pretty self-explanatory. Just go ahead and fill out the form, so to speak, and just go like, select these vertices, and then select this vertex group that you want it to be assigned to. Check that the weight is still 1. Hit the assign button, and you're pretty much good to go. And keep doing this until you're done with the whole rig. You can do it in any order that you want. But yeah, it's pretty simple. So now if we go back into object mode and go into weight paint mode, which is Control Tab, you'll notice all of these vertex groups have assignments to them now, which is what we want. So this is what it should look like. If you just go through your vertex groups, you'll notice that every single one of them has a red spot, except for the upper arm, which I'm going to do real quick. Upper arm, that's what we want. Boom. Okay. So now the upper arm does as well. So it's very simple. And now if you notice, if we go ahead and move this rig, it's exactly what we want, except for this screen here, which I missed. I'm going to go ahead and it's very important to get all your vertices, by the way. This is going to be to the hand. So you'll notice that this rig works really well now. I mean, it has all the basic features and it can move things, and it looks pretty good, pretty impeccable. You know, I'm not complaining. But if you notice, there are some things that can be improved. So the last thing we're going to do is rotational transform locks. This one's pretty simple, and it just kind of gives an extra little convenience to the animator. If you notice here, this rig isn't really designed to go left and right. I mean, in terms of the model, this joint here is a hinge. It's not a ball joint. So it's not supposed to rotate this way or, you know, that way. It's supposed to rotate only on one axis. Only on one axis. So what you want to do is under the bone tab, which is a new tab for bones, it's right next to this little person thing. Anyway, under the bone tab, there is transform locks. And under this section, it might be pretty obvious what to do now. If you click this padlock, it will lock it. So now I can't rotate it on the x-axis. Now I can only rotate it on the z-axis. See that? So if I lock all of them, then I can't move it at all. So what I want to do is find the axis that is right for me, and this is the axis that I want it to lock to. These are local axes, by the way. And so this here is what I want. This is exactly how I want this thing to move, and I don't ever want it to move any other way. So that's perfect. A similar thing can be said for the fingers. So as you can see here, this finger is not meant to move this way. It's not really made to rotate on that axis. So let's go ahead and try the x-axis again and see if it works. And yeah, it is coincidentally also the x-axis. It could be any of the axes depending on how you actually created the rig. But I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here. Yeah, it's working. And I'm going to start going through these fingers and seeing if it... So here we go. Here we go. So this one is not the x-axis. This one is... I want it to go along this side. So my bet is it's the z-axis. But I could still be wrong. Let's go ahead and try the z-axis. And yeah, it's the z-axis. So the z-axis is now forming that really nice rotation there. And I'll do the same thing for this guy, which is, again, the z-axis. And this guy can be anything, so I'm just going to leave this one alone, actually. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for these. I'm going to guess it's the z-axis again. No, it's actually the y-axis. No, it's not. It's still the x-axis. Interesting. Ideally, these should be, you know, the same, but I'm being rather lazy for this, and it doesn't really matter too much. So once you have all these axes restrained and locked, you'll be able to animate this more easily. You know, you'll be able to be like, oh, go here, without having to change or press any extra buttons, and suddenly you have this working robot rig already. And this can be omnidirectional. That's fine. And this, of course, could only go this way. So that's totally okay. So basically, you know, after you get those transform locks in and you have all the weight mapping done, this is a functional rig. This is all you need to animate. There are, of course, some quality of life things that you can do to help, you know, make this rig a little bit easier and faster for the animator, but those are more advanced features that we don't need to go into right now. I will be making a how to rig anything in Blender part 2 for advanced constraints and such like that. So I'm gonna say this is done. You guys can have fun with this robot. You know, obviously it's a nice robot. And let's move on to the tentacle. So here I am looking at the tentacle. For some reason, it looks very edible right now, but I made it very quickly, and we're going to go ahead and rig it so that we can move it around and such. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. We have this guy in rest position, and we're going to go ahead and hit Shift-A, Armature, Single Bone. Alt-G to bring it to the center, and here we go. So I'm going to show you a slightly different technique for this one. Another thing you can do, because in this particular case, in this kind of gelatinous mass, there's no real joints, right? Tentacles are prehensile, so they're all muscle. They can go in any direction, from anywhere or whatever. There's certain ways that you can rig this with a curve, but usually it's very, very much so fine to just rig it with bones. You just have to have enough bones to make it look smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and do a different method than I did earlier because of the nature of this thing. And I'm going to bring this up all the way to the top. One giant bone all the way to the top. And this might not make any sense at first, but then wait for it. I'm going to hit W, and I'm going to hit subdivide. Boom, 2 bones. Hit subdivide again. Boom, 4 bones. And I'm going to do it again. Yeah, that might be too much. 4 is fine. 4 is good. By hitting subdivide twice, you double the amount of bones in the same amount of space. So now that we have these bones and these joints here, and they're all parented, by the way, they're all connected to each other, and this being the end of the parent, this being the beginning, go ahead and moving these, you'll notice that you have the ability to make something kind of, you know, tentacly, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to start by, since we already have this, I mean, this is all the bone, this is all we really need for this armature. I mean, that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and start by parenting this to the parenting the octopus tentacle to the armature. Now this time we're not going to do empty groups. This time, under these 3 options, we're going to do automatic weights. As I said earlier, this is a more organic approach. So by doing this, it will not only create the vertex groups for you, but it will also add values to those vertex groups for you based on approximately how far the vertices are from the bone. So let's go and try it. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Tab while having the mesh selected, and it'll go into weight painting mode. And wow, look at all those colors. It's amazing. I'm going to go ahead and select this. I'm going to bring it into X-ray mode, which is just this option here under the armature tab. And that will let me see the bone through the object just temporarily so that I can select it while having this thing available. So if I go into pose mode first, and then I select the mesh, in weight map mode, you'll notice this pose mode still looks like it's selected. You can actually select the bones while you have the mesh selected to see what these vertex groups look like. And as you can see, they look pretty good. I mean, Red means an influence of 1, as you saw before with the robot arm. And of course, blue means 0. Green is usually 0.5, and anything warmer is a higher number, and anything cooler is a lower number. So light blue is 0.2-ish, etc., etc. So let's go and see this in action. Let's go and bring this around. That we don't really need to. This is just apparent, so you don't see anything here. Curve this. That looks pretty organic. Curve this. All right. Not bad. Not bad at all. This is a pretty good tentacly shape. You know, I'm okay with this. However, it's kind of annoying to have to, like, you know, go here and, you know, animate this every single time I want to animate every single bone like this, you know, just to get this curvy. It's too much. It's too much for me. So there's a couple solutions. One of them is to use constraints, but I'm not going to go over constraints until the advanced tutorial. So I'm going to teach you guys a trick instead. And this trick is a very nice trick to have when you're animating splines like this. And a spline is basically just like a wiggly tentacle thing. This works great for tails as well as for tentacles and other such things. So go ahead and select all the bones that you want to animate and hit Control period. You can also go down here and select, instead of median point, individual origins. By selecting individual origins, suddenly you're animating every bone at the same time. So when you rotate this, I get to rotate every single bone at the same time. So this gives you a really nice, you know, starting point at the very least. So you can be like, oh, I want it to bend this way. You know, maybe you don't want this bone. Oh, I want to bend this way. I want to bend that way. You know, maybe you want to bend this way, but you also want to bend that way. Well, you can do that. Or you can do, you know, this. Or you can do it specifically on the local x-axis for everything. It's a very handy tool to have. It's super nice. You don't need any constraints for it, and it gives you the ability to still edit it individually if you wanted to. So yeah, that's it for rigging a tentacle. It's extremely easy, and I hope this helps you guys in actually starting out with rigging in Blender. Now, I mean, this tentacle is basically done, but I'm going to go ahead and point something out, and that is we didn't actually do any weight painting ourselves. If you notice, this kind of, the automatic process takes care of the weight painting for us for a basic rig like this. But if the mesh was a little bit more complicated, then you might want to do some weight painting yourself, which is very easy to do because once you're in this mode, the weight paint mode, as you can tell with the colors, you already have a brush and you can actually go ahead and brush things over. So I want to go ahead and go here. This is your brush here. And it should be not under blur, but it should be under mix. Mix is the one that you want to use. And you can set your weight to be 1 or 0 or 0.5 or 0.3 or whatever you want. And then just paint. Just paint on the mesh directly like that. And my strength is actually 0.7, which is kind of like opacity. So let's go ahead and bring that up to 1 just so that I can show you guys exactly what it does. This should color everything I touch red. And as you can see, it does, but there is a bit of a fall off here, which is great for organic things. You know, there's the green at the edges that kind of it blends in together with the rest of the weight around it. But if you don't want that, go ahead and just go to the curve section here, which is a drop-down menu under the weight painting tools, and hit this one right here, which is constant. And then you should only have, wait, let me go ahead and apply my subsurf modifier, because if you have subsurf on, it will automatically have that fall off no matter what. Turn off the subsurf and suddenly you have this, oh, apply the subsurf and then apply the constant fall off. And then you have this perfectly even redness here. So that'd be really nice. For example, if I wanted to be a little bit more influence, you know, for the second bone on these tentacle areas, I can go ahead and paint that in. And it's very adjustable, very customizable. Feel free to play around with it. And yeah, that's the basic concept for rigging. With the tools I just taught you, you could conceivably create a basic rig for anything in Blender. And it's very intuitive and very simple, and I hope you guys liked it. Give me some feedback if you guys want to see more of these kind of tutorials. Let me know. If you guys found this helpful, let me know. If you guys have any questions, just comment in the comment section down below. And until then, if you guys are interested, check out the animations on my channel. And stay tuned for the advanced rigging tutorial, which there should be a link here if it's already out. So if you like the stuff on my main channel and you like the stuff on my second channel, subscribe to both because I'll be posting on here a lot for tutorials and such like that. And you won't be necessarily notified every time I do that on my main channel. So go ahead and do that, and I'll see you guys next time. I will see you guys next time. Hey guys, what is up? I'm gonna teach you guys how to rig me sheep. Whoa, hey guys, I didn't see you guys there. Well, you might be wondering, why is a tentacle talking to me? You're probably not thinking that at all, actually. This is probably very normal for you. Oh, over here. Oh, over here. Over here. It's me. It's me, the robot arm. I'm gonna teach you how to rig me. Yeah, you are gonna rig me. 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 I'm fine. I'm a tentacle.